In these historically challenging times, doesn't it make you stop and think about a number of different things? It does for me. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And you know, living in this COVID-19 era has really caused me to pause and stop and think about certain things, about certain results. And I want to share with you some of them, and it's a fairly wide range of different topics. And I'd be curious to some of the things that you're thinking about, and if you could send in the comment section, I would very much appreciate that, because maybe there are some things that we want to talk about there. Now, the first thing that I'm thinking about is, you know, there's been such a long drought since we've had any, you know, major sports, and I'm a sports nut, particularly basketball. Wow, the NBA season has restarted, and it's taking place inside a bubble. So what does being in the bubble mean? What does it do? So on and so forth. Well, first of all, there are certain things that you have to give up. You have to give up your family to a major degree, because you can't, you know, they can't be in contact with you if you want to stay inside the bubble. They have 14 days where you have to be quarantined if you go outside the bubble. So, you know, those are the negative things. So what are the positive things that I see from being in the bubble? Well, when you're in a bubble, one of the things that you do is you have singleness of purpose. These guys, these players that are in the bubble, they're there for one purpose, and that is to play ball. That is for their team to win. So they are much more focused. They don't have to do any traveling. They don't have to get tickets for, you know, their family, their friends, so on and so forth. They're able to maintain a single focus. Additionally, as a team, being in the bubble means there's really nobody else to associate with. So what do? They bond more tightly together as a team. These are things that, you know, as a leader, when we get back to some sense of normalcy, one of the things that you want to do is keep these things in mind. What do I believe the results will be? I believe that we are going to see some of the best games in the future come up, because the players are so focused, they're so tuned in, they're so locked in together as a team, and they don't have the distractions that are going to prevent them from performing at their best. So and the fact that there's, you know, there's no home court advantage because all the games are played in one place, tells me that this is going to be a true test of their abilities, and that I'm really excited about seeing what happens, because I believe when the focus is there, you're actually able to see the best people perform at the very highest level. Another thing that I'm thinking about is, I heard a quote from Maven of Genius, Rodney Dangerfield, and he was in a little clip that I saw with Johnny Carson, and he said, you know, if I had a much lower IQ, I could really enjoy this conversation. You know, and I thought about that, and I said, in other words, you're calling these people stupid, all right? So what does that relate to in today's times? Well, when you take a look at the numbers and see how many people have caught this virus, the number reached over 5 million. That's a lot of people in this country alone. Almost 1 in 4 of the entire population of the world, where we represent 4% of the population. Those numbers are kind of alarming, wouldn't you say? And, you know, I could really enjoy this conversation if my IQ was lower. Who do you think you're fooling here? If you're telling people, yeah, it's because we do more testing, come on. You know, if you're going to try and explain something, at least try and do something intelligently. How can you believe that the reason that we, with 4% of 1/25th of the world's population, represent 1/4 of those infected, that it's because we're doing more testing? Come on. You know, give the people in the United States a little bit of credit. We're not buying that, and that's just a bunch of hooey. You know, I once saw Mike Ditka, the coach of the Chicago Bears, being interviewed by somebody, and somebody asked him a really kind of a ridiculous question, and he looked at the guy and he said, "Who are you crapping? All right, who are you crapping?" And when I hear the president say it's because we're doing more testing that we have such big numbers, I feel like yelling into the TV, "Who are you crapping?" All right? Because it's just a ridiculous, stupid thing to say. Another thing I think about is, like I said, I'm watching these games in the bubble, and they've done they've been very, very creative. And what they do is they try to put in the background, if the Boston Celtics are playing, they put in the background things that you would see in the TD Garden, in the garden in Boston, in the background, the same commercials, the same things like that, the same background as the announcements, so on and so forth. But one of the things that's really, really neat is they have virtual fans. And apparently what they do is that people either pay money or somehow get where they're sitting in front of their computers and they have their cameras on their face, and they put people in the seats. And they have little babies there and so on and so forth. And what I see when I look at that is you see a bunch of big heads, doing crazy things, making noise, but not really doing anything because they're not really there. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the leadership that we have in Washington. You get to see all of the big heads, you get to see them doing this and doing that, but you don't see them doing anything. You don't see them affecting the game. They don't have any kind of a plan that's going to move things forward. All they're doing is sitting there, and they're making a lot of noise, and they're not doing anything that's making the game a positive experience. The fans are enjoying the game. The politicians are there, and what they're doing is they're just watching, and they're not doing anything except yappity yap, yappity yap. And it's time to get some sort of a game plan for the ultimate game that we're playing right now, which is solving COVID-19, where we're all acting as one team and not as 50 or more different entities. That's dumb. Okay, if I could go back 20 years and speak to myself, what would I say? I saw that in an article, and it made me stop and think, what would I say? Now, keep in mind, I'm 60 years old. All right, I'm in my mid 60s. I'm a senior citizen. So going back 20 years would put me in my 40s. And at the time when you're in your 40s, you've experienced quite a bit. You haven't experienced everything, but you've experienced quite a bit. And by that time, I had achieved a number of different goals that were my burning desires, that were my objective. I had had the benefit of a number of different mentors that taught me quite a bit. I still had a few mentors to go, but my main mentors, two of my main mentors, Mort Mutnick and Bob Anderson, had already done their work by the time I was in my 40s. And so what would I say to myself? I would say to myself, don't get distracted. Because what happens is when you get distracted and you don't have that singleness of purpose to a particular objective, you start to meander away from those people that are successful. I reached a very high level during that time period. Why did I reach that level? It was because I was focused on achieving one particular objective. That was my, I woke up thinking about it. I would visualize it. I would make plans for it. I would work with people. I would teach them. I would get the team together, and we would work in unison to achieve a particular goal. That was for me, the highest point of my career at that particular point in time was in my 40s, maybe early 50s, working with people. And then after that, I started to get cocky. I didn't learn it. I didn't, look at all the things I know. I don't need to learn anymore. I stopped reading. I stopped seeking out new viewpoints, new perspectives, new paradigms. And when that started to happen, my scenario started to decrease very, very quickly. And boy, did it decrease to a level I don't even want to talk about. You know, so that the one thing that I would tell myself is identify your purpose, focus on your purpose, and keep a singleness of purpose. So 20 years ago, I would tell myself that, and then I wouldn't have fallen into that valley that took me so long to get back to ground level. Another thing, speaking of distractions, one of the things, you know, I look, you know, this is a YouTube channel, so I look at YouTube, of course, and on the side they have, you know, different suggestions for things that you want, you know, that you might be interested based upon your viewing history. Now, I don't know how this particular video was suggested, but it just brought to mind the distractions to the level that people are willing to go to get themselves distracted. The title of this particular video was, and I'm not joking here, 10 Shocking Facts About Rocky and Bullwinkle. Now, Rocky and Bullwinkle were a couple of cartoon characters, you know, from my childhood. I don't know if they've made it where, you know, people, younger people today even know who I'm talking about. But leave us say there were two cartoon characters, Rocket J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle the Moose. Now, what are the 10 shocking facts? What's going to shock me about Rocky and Bullwinkle? Is it their sexual orientation? Probably not. Okay, is it the fact that, you know, Bullwinkle had somebody else take his SATs for him in school? You know, is it the fact that Rocky had a, you know, a sex change operation? I don't know. You know, it just boggles my mind. What are 10 shocking facts about Rocky and Bullwinkle that could possibly have my interest? I don't know. And point is, you need to be careful when you're on a medium like YouTube or Facebook or things like that, that your mind gets distracted by ridiculous things. And the final thing I want to talk to you about that I thought about, and this might be somewhat controversial, to me it isn't, but it may be somewhat controversial to some people that are a little bit more to the right than I. And it's a quote that Donald J. Trump said when he was talking about his favorite rival for the presidency, who he refers to as Sleepy Joe Biden. And I'm quoting, this is what he said: "He's against God and he's against guns." Now when I heard that, my first thought was, he's against God? Okay, you know, maybe he said something and he's against guns. Now when I hear somebody say he's against God and he's against guns in the very same breath, that implies to me that God is for guns. I'm confused. You know, the infinite person that I would worship can't be for guns, for violence, for death, for causing pain. I don't see it that way. And to put those two things together, he's against God and he's against gun, implies God is for guns. Is God really for guns? You know, I don't want to get into a religious, you know, discussion here. That's not what we do in this channel. What we do in this channel is, you know, we work on personal development. I refer to the infinite mind as, you know, the Almighty, okay? The infinite mind. And the infinite mind sees things as they are, doesn't have an opinion what's good or what's bad, because that changes over time. I mean, at one time slavery was good, now it's not good. You know, it never was good, but in the minds of people, it was a good institution to have. You know, so my point is, things change over time. We've gone through certain cycles in history so that the infinite mind, you know, works uniformly. So if you have a burning desire for something that's really, really good and you pursue and take the right path, you will achieve that. If you have a burning desire for something that's really, really bad, the same laws of nature apply. So that's why I say there's no really, good or bad, that changes over time, that the laws of nature are consistent. But it's very difficult for me to believe that the infinite mind is someone that's in favor of killing. I don't know, it's just me. Got a little heavy today, and because we don't end a meeting on a certainly philosophical note, let's get out there. I'd be interested in your comments, and let's charge! I'm Eli's dad.